So Tom, your new book is what, the end of civilization and the future of money?
Actually, it's the other way around. It's the end of money and the future
End
of
of money and the future of
civilization.
civilization, exactly.
And those two are very closely connected because we have a very dysfunctional money system, and we need to find some way to transcend it. The way it works today, we have credit money, which is monopolized by a banking cartel. So we have this arrangement between banking and politics where the private productive sector gets starved for credit, while the public sector, the government, gets lavished with credit to fight wars and maintain an empire around the world. So there is within this existing system a growth imperative. You know, economists like to talk about growth. That seems to be a preoccupation with them. But when you think about it, nothing can grow forever. You have to reach a steady state at some point, especially now that we're seeing the limits to physical growth with pollution of the planet, resource depletion, all kinds of other crises that are coming together. And in my view, the main problem that's driving this destructive growth machine is the dominant money and banking paradigm. Because when banks make loans, they're basically giving us back our own credit and charging us interest to use it. And this interest feature of the credit money system causes debt to grow just with the passage of time. So in order for the economy to continue, in order for the system not to fail, debts have to be continually expanded. The banks have to keep making new loans to new borrowers which have the same basic problem. When they make a loan, they create the principal, but they don't create enough money to pay the interest a year or 2 or 10 down the road. So what you have is this impossible situation of people owing more money than there ever is available to repay. So the banks can either lend into the private sector or they can lend to the public sector, the government. And we see in this most recent bubble and bust cycle, which was based on real estate, we saw the banks giving mortgage loans to anybody and everybody without adequate consideration to their ability to repay those loans. And initially they were giving easy credit terms, low interest rates, with a clause that would cause higher interest rates to kick in later on, and balloon payments in some cases as well. So what you ended up with was a lot of new buyers in the market to buy houses and commercial real estate, and those new buyers were driving the prices up, which justified even greater mortgage loans, greater mortgage debt the second time around when that real estate was sold. So we had this ratcheting up of real estate prices and this escalating of real estate debt. Well, eventually every bubble has to burst, and the bubble in the real estate market burst when some of those mortgages started to default. When the burden of debt was too great for the borrowers to bear, then they had to default on the loans. That meant the banks were foreclosing on some of the properties, putting them back on the market, driving prices back down. So in this bubble and bust cycle, prices go up and then they collapse. But this is an artifact of the system. You always have a bubble of some kind. Before the real estate bubble, it was the dot-com bubble, and before that it was a stock market bubble. And right now what we have is a situation where the economy is on life support, and the government is having to take over these toxic debts from the private sector. So now it's the public sector debt, and you and I are responsible for it because it's our government that owes the debt. And the way they finance that is by issuing bonds. And we're seeing that every year, without almost exception, the government runs a budget deficit. And those deficits have been increasing recently to astronomical proportions. The current budget deficit projection is $1.4 trillion. This is many times our previous record budget deficit. And the government is telling us that these budget deficits are going to continue into the indefinite future. And they're estimating a total of $9 trillion additional of government debt over the next 10 years. And these numbers are always understated by government projections, so we can expect that it's going to be much more drastic than that.
You know, a lot of people think that we're going, you know, back into this productive mode. I mean, do you feel that?
Well, the economy is not getting better. The stock market is up, but that doesn't mean that the economy is getting better. Unemployment rates are still high and rising. Foreclosures are still escalating. I think we're going to see another wave of foreclosures in the commercial real estate market sometime fairly soon. But I think we're at a new point in history where we're not going to get back to normal. Even George Soros is saying that this is the end of an era and that there is no business as usual. Right now, the U.S. government debt has grown to about 3.5 times gross domestic product. In 1965, it was only about 1.5 times gross domestic product. And George Soros is saying that within the next 3 years, we're going to see that rise to 5 times gross domestic product. So we're not going to get back to normal. We have to reach a steady state economy just because the planet will not tolerate additional abuse. We're running out of resources. Cheap oil is at an end. It's going to be more and more expensive to extract what oil remains. Energy prices are going to go up. As the government runs higher and higher budget deficits and sells more and more bonds, and the Federal Reserve and the banking system monetize that debt, it's debasing the value of the dollar. So eventually, when inflation begins to be felt, we're going to see a drastic debasement in the purchasing power of the dollar, especially for imported goods. And other countries around the world that have been financing our debt for many years now are indicating that they've accumulated enough dollars and their appetite for dollars is pretty much satisfied. So who's going to buy the rest of this U.S. government debt as these budget deficits escalate? Well, the buyer of last resort, of course, is the banking system and the central bank, the Federal Reserve. And when the Federal Reserve buys U.S. government bonds, it puts basically legalized counterfeit money into the system because there aren't additional goods and services going into the market to accompany that new money going into the market. So it dilutes the value of all the dollars that are already in circulation. What has been holding down inflation up to now is the fact that we have a depression. The private sector, the productive sector, is being starved for credit, so businesses are being bankrupted, people are being thrown out of work, employers are releasing workers, and unemployment continues to increase. So you have a lot of people in the private sector who are still scrounging to get enough dollars to pay for the basic necessities of life. That's what's been holding down the inflation of prices generally. But as people begin to adjust, we're going to move toward a steady state economy where growth is not the driving force. But in order to really solve this problem, we have to take the growth factor out of the money system. And the way we intend to do that is by organizing local credit clearing exchanges that provide direct clearing between buyers and sellers, between debits and credits. So that those that buy get a debit to their account, those that sell get a credit to their account. So, you know, we're all buyers and we're all sellers. At one time we're buying something, at another time we're selling something, even if it's just our labor that we're selling. So banking really is just a credit clearing process today. It's an accounting system that keeps track of your positive credits and your negative decredits when you spend. So we have to generalize this credit clearing process, I think, outside the banking system, and it has to be on an interest-free basis so that we don't have this growth imperative built into the exchange system. So basically we're reinventing money in banking. And when I talk about the end of money, the title of my latest book, what I mean, it's the end of money as we have known it. We think of money as a thing, but money is really, as I said, just an accounting system.